That morning I was sleeping actually, and my boyfriend at the time, he was driving. I had moved back from Boston, and he was driving over to see me when I received a call from him, and he woke me up telling me that he had to turn around, that, planes were crashing, and I was literally just waking up, so I didn't know what he was talking about. And I turned on the TV, and like the rest of the world, saw what was happening, and the second plane coming in. And I lived in Boston for a few years, but I'm born and bred New Yorker. And I felt so manicky that whole day. My father was working at the time, and he was picking my mother up to bring her, back to the house. And I just felt helpless, and I kept seeing what people could do. People were lining up to try to volunteer, to donate blood. And I have background in social work. So I saw pictures of people crowding in front of the hospitals in anticipation of their loved one possibly being brought in. And they were overwhelmed. So I figured maybe I could go down to the hospital that was closest to the site, which was right behind Pace University. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. And my parents were like, are you crazy? You're not even going to get anywhere near there. So I brought my hospital ID from where I used to work, a box of gloves, some particle masks, and I got in the car. And I was stopped by police before I even got on the LIE. And the first police officer saw my ID and gloves and was like, oh, you're a doctor in the medical field. And before I could even say anything, he waved me on. And seeing the LIE empty with no vehicles was so bizarre. As a New Yorker, that's a main road that's traffic 24/7. And I got as close as I could by the Staten Island Ferry, parked my car, put a sign, please don't tow, I'm volunteering, walked over, and it was chaos. There was darkness because no lights were on in the street. There was so much debris, so you're walking on top of just like compacted ash and, blinds on the street, papers flying everywhere. It just seemed like such a different world. It was like, this is Manhattan, this is our city. And I got to the hospital, they turned me away and said, no, we don't need your help, even though it was complete chaos outside. And then as I was walking away, I was gonna see, I guess, well, what I could do. Somebody said, we need help. Can somebody help us walk supplies over? Because they couldn't drive to closer to the site because of all of the debris and all the fire hoses that were connected to wow, I'm just remembering that. All of the fire hoses that were connected to every hydrant that were heading in that direction, so they couldn't drive and bring the supplies over. They had set up a triage center at One Liberty, which was, downstairs Brooks Brothers. There was a Starbucks in the lobby, so they set up a triage area. So I helped bring gloves. They were bringing, IV, also the long poles to hang the IV from. So I helped walk those supplies over, and from that moment on, I just stayed there. And unfortunately, after a few hours, the triage area started becoming a makeshift morgue, and those were happening, in like areas until it got a little bit more organized. I mean, it was so chaotic that evening. I got there around 6 p.m. So, that night is when they started basically putting curtains and just on the wall, right, morgue. And at that point, I was in the way more than I was being helpful. So I walked over and I met up with a podiatrist who which was, you'd think it's strange, but at the point, he said, I need help. And I said, sure, I'll help. You would think that was strange, but there was so much heat from the fires on the pile at that point that people were kind of having injuries. Their boots were having, things were cutting through. So it actually ended up being helpful. So I ended up at the corner in the Burger King helping him. And basically we needed some, socks. People were, feet were getting drenched from the water, the hose, that was being placed on all of the fires that were still occurring underneath the pile. And basically I had to break into the Central 21, but we got the police's, permission to go in, and we got socks and towels and brought that over. But yeah, and basically breaking into the Burger King and restaurants just to try to get food and make like some cheese sandwiches and bring them over. Just anything you could do. Those first few days are just very chaotic, and sleeping there, and you kind of lose track of time. The one thing I do remember is if you ever, I've never worked in construction sites, but if you ever hear 3 horns, it means danger, run. And they thought the Brooks Brothers building was coming down. So I remember just turning around and just seeing the sea of men and people just running because they thought another building was coming down, and that occurred 3 times. So those first few days when I slept there, I was kind of afraid to go in, so I would sleep in the doorways of the buildings because I didn't want to go in. And I just remember I would like, okay, here's an empty doorway. Let me just lean here and just kind of take a nap for like 10 minutes and then just keep going. So that was like my first day, few days, hours at the site, was just kind of going from one location to another and trying to help where I could. And just sadly seeing, the hope of that people were going to come out, and just seeing the morgues start, popping up. That was, I think, the hardest thing that right now I'm remembering. I haven't spoken about this in a while, so excuse me if I'm not, I'm babbling a bit from one thing to the other. But yeah, that was my entry into that. But it was just amazing to see how many people came together to try to work together. That I always remember from the first day until the last day.
You met your husband down
Yes.
there. Do you want tell us the story?
Well, after a little while, you had to become part of an organization. I was, OEM, I got an ID from them. So I was able to stay for like in the first 2 weeks. After a few days, I went home and showered and came back. But after a while, you had to be part of either Red Cross or Salvation Army or some organization. And I joined Salvation Army. And I was with them all the way to the end. And great organization, by the way. And in March, basically the fire department had rotations, and they would have GPS, like they would find remains and tag of the location of, the remains that they were finding. That was one of the jobs that they had at the site. and he had a rotation of that. So I met him in March. He almost ran down our gator driver. Gator drivers, basically they rode and brought coffee to our hut. We had sites that were hydration tents, and you can find socks and aspirins, things like that. And it was a respite place, a place for people to particularly just come in, and we talked. And it was hard because after a while you were seeing some really tough things after day. So we were there to help. And our gator driver comes in and says, damn Lopez, he almost killed me. And anyone who knows my husband, he has had quite a few car accidents. So it's not an unusual tale that he almost ran down our gator driver. And I was like, who's this? And he's like, Alex Lopez. This guy is, right now he's GPS. I'm like, oh, okay. So I didn't know who he was. And I met him when I went to fill up their cooler. We would go over to the different locations and, fill up with water, beverages, coolers that they had. And Tent House, I went in, and that's where I met him, and just was like, hi, bye. And his friend Thule, I had already met him. You've spoken to Christine, her husband Thule, who I didn't know was Alex's best friend. And I had already met Thule. He's quite a character. And basically we just started talking and becoming friends. And that was it. His last day was Easter Sunday, and a bunch of us volunteers cooked a breakfast Easter Sunday for anybody that was working at the site, because it's tough working the holidays. So we did that, and I thought that was the last day I was going to see him, and it was like, all right, you take care of yourself. But yeah, that was where I met him, and we were just friends for a while. And
so when did you start dating?
When the site closed, well, I saw him on the last day of the closing ceremonies. That was in May 28th was, the closing ceremonies. And I bumped into him and Paul from his firehouse. And so we took some pictures, and everybody was like, kind of, last day we're all going to see each other. Because even though it was, such a horrible occurrence, it was a city within a city, and everyone there, we developed these close bonds and friendships. So we all kind of, wanted to see each other. And, the last time, and I bumped into him at a bar, and everybody was exchanging numbers, because by that time, we were all afraid of how we were all going to react when the site closed. By that time, there was an EMT worker, really nice young kid, who had hanged himself, couldn't handle what he saw. So we all kind of started doing check-ins, like every 2 weeks, every month, like just calling, hey, how you doing? You okay? You want to talk? So he became part of my check-in, and just kind of kept in touch. And it wasn't until the end of the year, he had separated from his wife, and I wasn't expecting anything. And when he asked me out, I just kind of was like, you know what, you just came out of a long, relationship, a marriage, maybe you want some time on your own. And he says, no, what, I've gotten to know you. And, so he asked me out, we went on a date, and basically that was it. After, we actually went on a date, knowing that, okay, this is a date, not like, hanging out as friends. We clicked very well. So we were together ever since.
And all this time, I mean, for the whole 8 months after September 11th, as of September 11th, you were a volunteer.
Yes.
Alex was an FDNYer. And you
Yes.
married when?
We got married September 19th of 2010.
And very
So
sadly,
we were together for almost 10 years. Yeah, and we finally got married.
but very sadly, we lost your husband.
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
the story. Tell the story to our listeners.
Um, he had a heart attack. Unfortunately, a lot of guys started having heart attacks. Some attribute it to the jet fuel that affected the heart muscles. And I actually knew another firefighter, and I became friends with his wife. And I know after I lost Alex, she's like, can I see the autopsy report? And I thought that was strange. And she said it mirrored her husband's autopsy report. And PD Laplace, that was the firefighter, she said it's like exactly a mirror of his. And Tully had a heart attack. He had to retire from the fire department. He was lucky, but he had it after dinner. So his son, who is a volunteer firefighter, was able to be there. And unfortunately, Alex was home, and I wasn't there. And so he had a heart attack, and unfortunately, I lost him.
At what age?
He was 42.
Now, what people may not be aware of, there are 68 cancers that are linked scientifically to the World Trade Center toxins. So if you get one of those cancers, and you prove that you were down there, you automatically get free lifetime health care, and you get compensation from the Victim Compensation Fund. Because FDNYers have an increased risk of heart disease and heart attacks by the very work that they do day by day, heart issues are not part of this program.
Right.
And yet, in your heart, you feel that this was the reason you lost your beloved Alex.
Yes. Yes. But there's not much you can do about it. And it's it really wouldn't affect, I don't know, it wouldn't change my situation. He's gone. So he's the love of my life, and I've lost him. So, but yeah, sadly, exactly everything you said is true. And so,
now, you, Liz, spent 8 months down there. So I have to ask you, how's your health?
I developed asthma, which I never had, rhinitis, so sinus issues, my back, from all of the heavy lifting and everything from there. A chiropractor actually helps a lot with that. And I went, and last year I had a biopsy done. I had they saw something underneath my left arm, and I'm supposed to go, again, and I haven't gone. I basically just decided I don't want to know. So, but as of the last biopsy, it was clear. I don't feel anything. It's so I look and I feel around, but I don't feel anything. So I've just decided I'm not gonna go. It was so incredibly stressful and awful. So I don't know. I'll figure it out, I guess, as it goes. But yeah, So far, just the asthma, the rhinitis, and the back, but nothing else so far.
You know I'm going to yell at you. You know
Yes,
I'm going to yell at you.
yes, I know. Christine does also. So,
I don't
yeah,
even know what to say. I don't even know what to say.
I know.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Um, it was literally right before COVID. So I know that right now everything is so incredibly hectic. So at that point, it was like, you know what, let me take put a break on it. And, but everyone, is kind of talking to me. So they're getting in my head. So I think that when things kind of start normalizing a little bit, I'm going to have to go for the biopsy again, and just,
Please.
uh,
And are you part of the World Trade Center health
yeah,
program? Good.
yes, I am.
Okay.
So I've been part of it from the very beginning. I think we were, um, one of the first ones that signed up for it, just to keep track of what's going on. And they actually are the ones through that pay for my asthma medication and things. So that's, helpful. So,
Is there anything else you want to add?
um, just basically, I've made some tremendous friends, that have been incredibly special in my life from such an incredibly sad disaster. Um, I just hope, and all of us, whenever we get together, we have a comfort, because sometimes people outside of the circle kind of, hey, you know what, it's not, that happened so many years ago, you guys are still getting together, you haven't gotten over it. And I don't think we should ever forget. Um, and it shouldn't just be just once a year. I mean, it's affecting so many people, as you know, the interviews that you've done with the FD who are continuing to get sick, and not just fire department, but, NYPD, my friends, my best friend, she was my maid of honor, her brother was NYPD, Peter Rodriguez, and he passed away from cancer. He was at the site. Volunteers, construction workers, that all were there, and sadly they're sick. So no, we're not over it, and no, we are going to continue, unfortunately, to be reminded of it. But I just hope that people don't forget, because the one good thing about it was how everyone came together. Right now, the country is so divided, and everyone's about political and no, don't wear masks, COVID exists, doesn't exist. It's crazy. And that events like that is when everyone came together to help. I mean, there were lines to donate blood, to donate clothing, to help. The bucket brigade, like lines to like move the debris. The cleanup happened in 9 months. If you arrived there and saw that huge pile, we thought we were going to be there for years, and it was done in 9 months, because people wanted it, a memorial to go up there, and just all these wonderful things that we're capable of. And it's, never forget 9/11, never forget how it brought everyone together, and never forget that unfortunately people are continuing to die from it.
Thank you, Liz Carvajal.